Children, listen, for I come back today to tell you a story of the long, hard way that I had to climb, that I had to know in order that my people might live and grow. Look at my face, dark as the night, but shining like the sun with love's true light. You see, I am the child that they stole from the sand some 300 years ago in Africa's land. And I am the dark girl who crossed the wide sea, carrying in my body the seed of the free. And I am the woman who worked the fields, bringing the corn, cotton, rice, and indigo to yield. I am the one who labored as a slave, beaten, mistreated, for all the work that I gave. You see, my husband, he was sold away from me. My children, one by one, they were sold to no love, no safety, no respect was I due. 300 years ago, in the deepest South, you see, my God, He put a prayer in my mouth. God put a dream like steel in my soul. Now through my children, I'm reaching my goal. Now through my children, young and free, I realize the blessings that were denied to me. You see, I couldn't write then. Couldn't read. I couldn't write. I had nothing, little or nothing, but my faith and my hope back in the night. Sometimes, children, sometimes the valleys, oh, they were filled with tears. Sometimes the road, oh, was hot with sun. But I had to keep on until my work was done. No, there was no stopping me. You see, for I carry the dream of the coming free. I nourish the dream that no man could smother. Deep in my heart, deep in my soul, deep in my heart, the Gullah Geechee mother. I had only hope then. But now through you, my children of the day, you see my dreams? Oh, they are. I can feel it. They are coming true. All you children in the world out there, no matter how far you've gotten and how far, we never forget my pain, my sweat, and my despair. Remember my years, heaven was sorry. You make of those years a torch for tomorrow. Lift high my banner out of the dust. Stand, stand, stand like free men and women supporting my trust. Remember, they'll tell you to forget, but I say remember the whip and the slaver's trap. Remember, I know even now, those in their struggle and strife may still try to bar you the way and deny you life. Oh, but march ever forward, breaking down bars. I know sometimes you feel like a motherless child. Sometimes you feel weary, but keep marching. Keep marching. Never give up, for I will be with you until no other dares to keep down the child of the Gullah Geechee mother. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. The great late freedom fighter, Fannie Lou Hamer, said that there are two things that we should never forget. Number one, we should never forget who we are. Number two, we should never forget the shoulders that we stand on. We should never forget those bridges that have brought us safely across. So we stand in this place, and as we lift these names, we will say Ashe. And Ashe is a Yoruba word which means amen, or so let it be. So let it be. Yoruba is a language that is spoken by some of our ancestors that came to this area. So we want to start. We want to remember those who came to this shore as Africans and were enslaved. We remember as they were brought from the coast of Africa, from Senegal to Angola, where slave castles were littered, slave dungeons. We remember all of those who were marched from the interior to the coast. Lives were broken apart, families were ripped, communities were torn. We remember those who died in the march to the slave dungeon. And we say, Ashe. We remember those who died in the slave dungeons that were called Christiansburg and Meadow Cross and Freedom and Alima. We remember those and we say Ashe. We remember those who came through the door of no return. They said that some of our ancestors came and lit down and picked up sand and put it in their mouths, wanting to carry a part of their homeland with them, knowing intuitively that they would never see home again. Can you imagine? We remember those who perished in the belly of a slave ship, those who came through the Middle Passage. So many of our ancestors crowded together, chained together, didn't have enough room to turn in the belly of a hot, humid, smelly, just suffocating. Some of them died of disease. Some of them jumped over. Some of them were thrown over. They said it was such a horrific event until sharks would follow a ship from the coast of Africa down throughout the Atlantic. We remember those ancestors. They said that their bones line the bottom of the Atlantic. We remember those who came here. They came from different ethnic groups. Some were Ikan, some were Ashanti, some were Volanfani. We remember some were Bobo, some were Dagon, some were Gisi, some were for the Gola people. Some were U, some were Fulani, some were Fan, some were Igbo, some were Limba, some were Wolof, some were Yoruba. We remember those that died in our Holocaust, upward of 4 million of our ancestors that died in the Middle Passage. We remember them and we say, Ashe, Ashe. We remember those that came and we descend from. We remember some of those from our history. We remember Phyllis Wheatley. We remember Sarah Douglas. We remember Martin Delaney. We remember William Still. We remember Frederick Douglass. We remember Maria Stewart. And we say, Ashe. We remember Ida B. Wells. We remember Mary Church Terrell. We remember Madam C.J. Walker. We remember the Honorable Marcus Garvey. We remember Stokely Michael. We remember Malcolm X. We remember W.E.B. Du Bois. We remember those from our own shore. We remember Hannah and Andrew Bryan. We remember Rachel Cunningham. We remember Mother Matilda Beasley. We remember those who came right here, right where we are. We remember those events, those historical events, like the siege of 1779, where those black men came from Saint Dominique and fought for our independence. We remember those 500. Some of them died, and some of them went back and helped to establish their own freedom, freeing their own land, making Haiti the first black republic. We remember all of those who came and fought in our American Revolution. That's a story that's not often told, but we remember those fighting men of Saint Dominique. We remember those, and we say our thanks. We remember that event that happened not too far from where we stand, right off of Augusta Road. That weary and rainy day in 1859, where 436 men, children, and women were brought from a plantation, the Pierce Plantation down in Brunswick, were brought to a racetrack right off of Augusta Avenue, where the old Bartow Homes was. And they said that it was such an atrocious act until the heavens burst open and rained, torrential rains for 2 days, as 436 souls were ripped from families and torn, crying. Their lives were shattered. But we remember that. And we remember that event was called the Weeping Time that happened right here in our community. We remember that, and we say, Ashe. We also remember that day when 20 ministers met, January 12th, 1965, and they crafted Field Order 15. In the spirit of self-determination, they crafted their own destiny. They gave credit to Sherman and Stanton, but it was those 20 men who stood there in defiance and beauty and brilliance and came up. This is what we need for our community. Field Order 15. Called it 40 acres and a mule. We never got our 40 acres or our mule. But we remember their names. So we remember all of those that came before us. I remember my grandmother, Amy Cooper. I remember calling the names of those as you are at home from your own family. And we say in one word, in one spirit, in one voice, Ashe. And we declare and we decree this day that we will never forget those who came here. And we say in one voice, Ashe, 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 and Ashe. We come here to tell their stories. We remember them and we tell their stories. There were some of our ancestors, when our story is told, sometimes it's told in a way that's not quite true. Our people were strong and resilient. And when they came, they brought with them their strength. They brought with them some of their stories. And sometimes, as we were placed on different places and different plantations to work and to build the economy of where we are, they said, they would look at us and they would laugh and say, oh, they know how their story, they know how to tell stories and they are talented, but it was so much more for us than that. We told our story, but to give us strength. We resisted. We were not just didn't get along. We resisted. We were rebellious and resisted. Even as they brought us over, there were stories of those who rebelled. To wade in the water because there was a conductor. Go to the water because the slave dogs could not catch your scent if you were in the water. So wade in the water. They thought we were just having a good time telling stories and singing, but no, we were not. There was a message. So when you hear there's something about the sound of the drum that moves us. When we hear the sound of the drum, it moves us, stirs something within us, and it always has. Because our people would talk with the drums. We brought the drums from Africa. And those drums, sometimes we use them as a form of defiance. Sometimes we use them to send a message. There was a rebellion that was called Stonewall Rebellion that occurred in Charleston, South Carolina. Occurred in 1739, September 1739, an Angolan by the name of Jimmy, some called him Cato. He began to play the drums and play the drums. Something within those Africans began to stir. They began to rise up and they led a rebellion. And as they played the drums, they went in and they moved through that area with a determination to be free. They killed everyone that was in their way with a determination, a fierce determination. They moved and moved from one area all the way, had reached all the way to the Edesta River when they were finally captured and killed. But it was the sound of the drum. Buried in my grave and go home to be with my Lord. Our people were resistant. Our people were strong and resilient. And they have been through the fire. But instead of being consumed, we have been forged by the fire. And it's made us a more resilient people. One of the things that has helped us to be resilient has been our art forms, our stories, our music. Things that they would take for granted and they laughed and say, oh, they have rhythm. They know how to move. Oh, look at those darkies. They have fun. But our stories were forms of resistance, forms of helping them to get through the process. When we came here, there were certain characters that you see in all stories from the African diaspora. And a common theme is where you see where the larger animal would be defeated by the smaller animal. Like one of the characters that came from Africa to the diaspora was Anansi the spider. He was a trickster. And we see that Anansi ended up in Jamaica and Trinidad and Brazil. We even found Anansi somewhere in the South Carolinas. But another character in Gullah Geechee folktale was Brother Rabbit. Rabbit was a common animal that you saw, so a lot of our ancestors told stories of Brother Rabbit. Brother Rabbit, he was a trickster. He was always getting in and out of trouble, always getting into something. These stories are stories when the animals used to talk and the people could fly. So let me tell you a story that is from this indigenous to this area, a story that I used to hear my grandmother tell. It's a story of Brother Rabbit. Way back when the animals used to talk, there was one particular year when it was particularly hard because a drought hit the land. And there was no food to be found anywhere. And the little animals, all of the animals were so hungry and they were tired and worn and there was no food anywhere. But there was, except one place, there was a pear tree right in the middle of the forest. Big, huge pear tree with the sweetest, hugest pears that you've ever seen and could ever taste. But there was one problem. At the foot of the pear tree, there was a tiger that guarded the pear tree. And whenever the children, the little animals, would try to come get some of the pears, the tiger would stand up and say, "Get! This is my pear tree." Tiger was selfish because it was enough pears for everybody. But the tiger wouldn't let anybody get there. Wow! Get away! This is my pear tree. You can't have any. So the little animals, they would just back up because they were afraid. But they were so hungry until the little bones stuck out of their skin. They were just, you could see their ribs. They were so hungry. One particular day, here come old Brother Rabbit. He was just hopping along, just happy as Brother Rabbit usually is. And he looked around. He said, "What's wrong with y'all? Why y'all acting like? Why you act like you lost your last friend?" They said, "What you mean? What's wrong? Don't you see what's happening? We're hungry. There's a drought in the land. There's no food. We can't find food anywhere." And Brother Rabbit said, "How about the pear tree? There's plenty pears on the pear tree. There's enough for everybody." I said, "No, we can't have any of those pears. There's a huge tiger." "What you mean? He won't No, as soon as we get close, he'll bring her up. He'll say, 'I'll kill you if you come close.'" He said, "Wait a minute. So you mean to tell me he won't let y'all get anything to eat? Not even one? What? Oh, no. No, this is not going to work. We have to do something about this." He said, "I'll tell you what. Y'all meet me here tomorrow. And we're going to have a meeting. And we're going to come up with a plan." So all of the animals came and they met. He said, "Come on, stand around." He said, "Now this is the deal. This is what we're going to do." He said, "Listen." He looked at all the animals that were the bird, old Brother Eagle, Brother Buzzard, all the animals that were the birds. He said, "Now listen." He said, "What I want y'all to do is when you hear me say there's a big wind coming, I want y'all to just flap your wings and make some noise. Blow and flap your wings." And of course, they started blowing and flapping their wings and making noise. And all of a sudden, the trees started swaying and the leaves started. That's good. So he said, "Now, to all of the other little animals, Brother Raccoon and Brother Possum and all the other little all of the 2- and 4-legged animals, come on. This is what I want y'all to do. When you hear me say there's a big wind coming, I want you to stomp your feet." So they started stomping their feet, making noise, stomping their feet, and making noise, and all of a sudden, the ground started trembling and vibrating. And old Brother Rabbit said, "Okay, that's enough. We got it." He said, "Now, I want y'all to be on y'all posts tomorrow, okay? No jokes. I want y'all to be here first thing in the morning." So, sure enough, first thing in the morning, all the animals came and they sat at they made their ways to their different posts and they sat there. All of a sudden, here come Brother Rabbit. He was just running. It's a big wind coming. And he ran. until he bumped right into Brother Tiger. He said, what's wrong? You woke me up. What's the problem? What's the problem? What's going on? What's going on? He said, you hadn't heard? He said, what you mean? I hadn't heard what? You hadn't heard. I don't hear nothing. What you talking about? What do you mean I hadn't heard what? He said, listen, there's a big wind coming. And all of a sudden, they started moving and the trees started shaking. He said, and I have to go. He had his rope. He said, I got to go tie down all the animals before the big wind blows everybody away. He said, what you mean tie down the little? Tie me up. Tie me. He said, no, tie you up. You a big rat, big old tiger. What do you need me to tie you up for? He said, listen, Brother Tiger said, listen, I don't care what you say, tie me up. He said, I'll come back, come on, there's a big wind coming. All of a sudden, the north shaking and the trees started swaying. He said, listen, let me get out of the way, let me go, come on. He said, listen, you're gonna tie me up. He said, okay, oh, okay. He said, listen, get down that tree, get up against the tree. So old Tiger went up against the tree. He said, and old Brother Rabbit, he took the rope, he tied him up. He said, okay. He said, are you okay? You tied? He said, no, my arms, they're not tied down. If the wind comes, I'll hit myself in the face. I'll hurt myself. He said, okay. And he tied him some more. He said, yeah, I'm okay, but I can still move my hand. And if the wind comes, I'll hit my head. He said, okay, and old Brother Rabbit jumped up on his shoulder and he tied him all the way up. He said, okay, can you move? He said, no, I can't move. I'm good now. He said, you sure you're good now? Try to move. Old Brother Tiger tried to move. He couldn't move a tap. And then old Brother Rabbit walked out. He said, come on out, little children. Come on. And get as much of the pears as you can eat. And they jumped out. They were so happy and they started eating those pears. And it was enough for everybody to get some. And they even take some more home. They had leftover pears. And they tell me that old Brother Tiger was so embarrassed that he ran away from this area and they've never seen him in this area again. Now, at the core of that story is really about wealth distribution. In our own community, there's no reason why some people should have so much more than other people. There are people in our community, we have had a poverty rate of 25%, close thereto for the last 30 years. We are a major port. So much money comes through our community. We're a tourist spot, a tourist hub. But there are people in our community that don't make a livable wage. There are people in our community that have to endure tremendous disparities. There are people in our community that live in food deserts and have to deal with food insecurity. There's an issue around wealth distribution, and that's a major issue. But that's another story for another time. Ashe? There's a big wind coming. So our stories were not just stories of, like I said, fun stories, entertaining stories, but everything that we did, there was a purpose to it. The songs that we sang, the way we danced, the way we moved, we even took rags and put them together and made symbols that were symbols and messages and images to the Underground Railroad. Have you ever heard even our songs, Wade in the Water, Wade in the Water? That was a message to wade in the water because there was conductor. Go to the water because the slave dogs could not catch your scent if you were in the water. So wade in the water. They thought we were just having a good time telling stories and singing, but no, we were not. There was a message. Wade in the water. Beautiful. God's going to trouble the waters. And even the drum was a means of resistance. So when you hear there's something about the sound of the drum that moves us. When we hear the sound of the drum, it just moves us. It stirs something within us. And it always has, because our people would talk with the drum. We brought the drums from Africa. And those drums were sometimes we used them as a form of defiance. Sometimes we used them to send a message. There was a rebellion that was called Stono Rebellion that occurred in Charleston, South Carolina. It occurred in 1739, September 1739. An Angolan by the name of Jimmy, some called him Cato. He began to play the drums and play the drums. Something within those Africans began to stir. And they began to rise up and they led a rebellion. And as they played the drums, they went in and they moved through that area with a determination to be free. They killed everyone that was in their way with a determination, a fierce determination. They moved and moved from one area all the way, had reached all the way to the Edesta River when they were finally captured and killed. But it was the sound of the drum. Listen to the sound of the drum. The drum and the sound of the drum, and moved our people so much so until they, through the fugitive slave codes, they outlawed the drum. Said we couldn't use the drum, but they took the drum. But our people would then use their bodies. Go ahead, brothers. We did it. You heard of ham bone? How many people ham bone, where you been? Ham bone, where you been? Around the world and back again, I can't say. But even after they took the drum, we would use our hands. We would use our feet. We would use our hands and our feet because we're very rhythmic people. We would move our bodies and use our bodies so they could take the drum, my brother, but they couldn't take the beat because the beat lived within us. They could take the drum, but they could not take the beat because the beat lives within us. So when you hear the drum, you shouldn't just drop it like it's hot. You should realize that that was a tool for us. It was a tool for our people. It was a tool of resistance. It was a tool of freedom. It was a tool of strength. Ashe. Another character that was very familiar and Gullah Geechee storytelling was High John the Conqueror. Now, High John the Conqueror was said to have been a prince that was stolen from Africa, but something about High John the Conqueror was different. He didn't think like most people. You know what they said? He was a time traveler and a shapeshifter. And sometimes old High John would just show up And all of a sudden they look and he'd be gone again. And then he would show up again. And then he would be gone again. He would always show up to stir up some stuff. Because that was High John the Conqueror. They said he was also a conjure man. How many people know what a conjure man is? And they said that when High John the Conqueror was ready, that he went back home to Africa. But they tell me that old High John the Conqueror was so powerful that he left part of his conjuring magic in the root of a tree. So there goes the old saying, you've been rooted. How many people have heard that? Yes. So, give me some more. All right. So, one of the other story that I'm going to tell is a story. How many people believe that they can fly? Yes, we can fly. They tell me that way back when in Africa, they tell me that our people knew how to fly. They said that they would step up like beautiful blackbirds and they would just fly. Oh, yes, they would. But then the slave catchers came. The Europeans came and they brought misery to the land. And they tell me that my people forgot how to fly. But there were certain Africans that still, my brother, knew the magic of flight. And one by the name of Jeremiah lived and worked not too far from where we stand on a rice plantation. And this particular day, he and his daughter Sarah worked on that rice plantation. He remembered, but didn't say a word. And his daughter worked. She was tired and worn. Anybody who know anything about a rice plantation, it was a very laborious form of slavery. And if rice was king, if cotton was king in Augusta, rice was king in Savannah and coastal Georgia and South Carolina. Rice built the backbone of the economy here. But it was a hard form of slavery. You had to actually get down in the swamps, and many of our ancestors were bitten by venomous snakes and alligators. It was a dangerous place to be. And this particular day, old Jeremiah and his daughter Sarah worked. And as they worked, they said it was at least 100 degrees. And they tell me that old Sarah worked and fell to the ground, and no sooner than she had fallen, they tell me that the one that they called the overseer was on her like white on rice, and he whipped her. And he whipped her. She stood back up, tall but yet afraid. No sooner than he rolled away, she fell back down again, and this time he whipped her until her dress fell like rags to the ground. As he rolled away, old Jeremiah stood there, and he held her, and he said, "It's time, my daughter, to do as you know how to do." And they tell me that he whispered some deep, dark, black African words, and something within Sarah began to stir. And they tell me that old Sarah, she put one foot in front of the other. And they tell me that she lifted her arms and they became like wings, and she began to fly. And she flew over the indigo fields and the rice fields and the cotton fields. And she flew over the tobacco fields. She flew over the corn fields, and she turned and flew over the middle passage, and she flew back home. Well, the overseer was perplexed, confused, and confounded, but there was nothing he could do because she was gone. Well, the next day, they tell me that it was hotter than it was the day before. They tell me that it was a young man who was not too much older than 13 or 14 years old. And as that young man began to work, he fell down to the ground, weary and worn. And as he fell, old Jeremiah was right there. And he whispered some deep, dark, black African African words. And something inside of that young man began to shift, and they tell me that he flipped over and he rode the wind like a horse. And he flew over the weary days and warm nights. He flew over the indigo fields and the rice fields. He flew over the Middle Passage, and he flew home to freedom. And all of a sudden, there was a great outcry, and one by one, they began to lift up, and they began to hold their arms out, and they became like wings. And they tell me they lifted off, and they began to fly, and they flew over weary days and worn nights and weeping and wailing and mourning, and they flew home to freedom. And I believe, brothers and sisters, I believe that one day, early one morning soon, we will wake up, but those words bubbling within our stomach, and we will be shaken and awakened from our collective slumber. And we will remember who we are, that we are descendants of a people who have been beaten but not broken. We are descendants of a people who have been shaken but not shattered, a people who have been cast down but never destroyed. We will remember who we are. And when we remember who we are, we will fly above those things that dismantle and destroy our community. We will fly above. I don't know who she thinks she is, because you know I got mine. We will remember that we are our brothers and sisters' keeper. We are no stronger than our weakest link. We will fly above young brothers slaying other young brothers. We will fly above racism. We will fly above unfair policies and unjust practices. We will fly above bitterness. We will fly above racism. We will fly above disparities. We will fly above food insecurity. We will fly above bitterness. We will fly above poverty. We will fly again. Because one morning early we will wake up with those words that are not quite remembered but not ever forgotten. Those words that reside deep within the collective psyche and memory of who we are as a people. And we will lift up, and we will fly, 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 fly again.